there, Kim Baker here with the Gallatin Area Chamber of Commerce, and we are excited to have you with us again on the corner of commerce and community for another edition of Community Corner. Joining me today is a good friend, a newer friend to the Chamber and the Gallatin area, and that's Brent Bruce with Rancho Capital. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you with the invite.
Yeah. So I think I told you most of my guests up until now have been people that are kind of born and raised in Gallatin, but you are not one of those people. You, like many in the area, have come to us from
Rancho Cucamonga, California.
Oh, so
I'm one of those transplants.
That's okay.
Forgive me.
But you're one of the good ones, right?
Well, you can make that decision.
What brought you to Gallatin?
Well, you know, our family knew that we wanted to move for a long time, and we were kind of looking at Texas a lot. I'd spent a lot of time in Texas. My family lives in Austin. They moved there from Southern California right after I graduated high school, about 20 years ago now. And we knew we wanted to move, and COVID really opened the door for us. Like for most people that made the move, COVID had something to do with it. And we started to look at making that move. We, again, looking at Texas and Tennessee, and really felt like we liked the greenery of Tennessee was one of the things, and really that kind of that southern comfort that we were looking for, which is a little different in Texas. It's a little different vibe. So we started looking at Tennessee. And kind of what I call the usual suspects, the Murfreesboro, the Brentwood, the Franklin, which is where I'm from Southern California, but most of the Southern California population moving here, that's the first cities that get mentioned. And, you know, I was looking in those areas and I just kind of felt like it was still a little too city. Mm-hmm. I wanted a little bit more country environment, a little more rural. And I also wanted to be by the lakes. My sons are outdoors. My second son especially is an avid fisherman, and I thought, let's get up closer to the lakes. And we started looking at the Lebanons and the Gallatins in that area, and you know, as I visited, and it just seems like, you know, God opened the doors for us, that the home that we're in now was kind of this, kind of like light shining down upon it the moment that I saw it, and I said, that's where we're going. And it has continued to be just, you know, surfaced in my heart that this is the right place for us.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. And it's funny that you say that about how those other communities had that city feel. I moved here a little over 20 years ago from South Florida. And so we were looking in the Nashville area because my dad knew he could live kind of anywhere around the Nashville area, and we were led to the Brentwood, Franklin area, and that's how he felt 20 years ago. It felt too city-ish. Mm-hmm. And so we stumbled on the Gallatin, which looks a lot different now than it did 20 years ago. Are you, did you actually come here to the area, or did you kind of buy the house and find the area sight unseen?
I had been to Gallatin once before. Okay. So I came out, flew out, and I was kind of looking at halfway investment thought process, you know, knowing that this was a great place to invest, as well as kind of having that, we know we wanted to move, so, but is now the time. So do we want to buy something now for when the time comes? And when I went through Gallatin the first time, you know, I was kind of like, oh, okay, you know, this is nice. And again, I was looking at Lebanon area because of being around the lakes. But a house popped up. It's really interesting that I was supposed to fly out on a Thursday, and that Wednesday night I went to, you know, get my seat and found out that I never booked that flight. So I had no flight the next morning that I thought I had, and you know, well, okay, I got to figure something out. Booked a flight that was at the end of the day rather than the morning, and that night while I was, you know, just, you know, getting ready to go to sleep, the house that I'm in now popped up for the first time.
Wow.
And I sent a message to my real estate agent and said, I'd like to see this house if I can before I leave. And the only time I could see it was at 1 o'clock the next day, which if I hadn't had my flight canceled, I would have already been gone. So it was one of those things that this house popped up at the last minute. I had one opportunity. I saw the house. I offered in the airport, was accepted the next morning, and 58 days later I lived here.
So you bought this house without your wife or family seeing it?
My wife never saw this house before.
How did she feel about that? Was she okay?
She saw the pictures. I mean,
Okay,
everyone's got
yeah.
Zillow, right? And she said, no, it's beautiful, and you know, I have 5 acres, so this was something really unique for us, coming from 14,000 square feet,
right?
In a very suburban area that we had lived in our whole lives. So she was excited about it and trusted, you know, that I knew what we were both looking for. But we actually did not let our kids see pictures of the house at all. The first time they saw the house was when they were here.
Really?
So we purposefully tried to avoid them seeing pictures to make it a surprise. And of course, my older ones, I have a senior, a senior, a sophomore, and a 7th and 6th grader. And the older ones especially, they just scoured Zillow, trying to find the house. And they had been told we were 7 miles from the high school. So they were doing a whole radius and looking at every house. They were trying to figure it out. And at one point, they did find the house. But uniquely and strangely enough, it said that it was zoned for station camp.
Okay.
And I said, must not be the right house because you're going to Gallatin. So that threw them off of that hunt. Fortunately, otherwise they would have nailed it. So I was able to say, that's not it. It must not be it. So when they got here, it was a surprise.
That's
was
really
cool.
fun.
Yeah. Not something that you get to do.
No.
You know, especially kids, like nothing is a surprise.
No.
So I really wanted to try to see if we could pull that off. And we drove all the way out here with, 2 trailers and 2 trucks. My wife hauled a trailer and I did, and here we come.
And you've been here how long now?
14 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so I moved here in November of 21.
And have we lived up to your expectations as far as
my
being warm
goodness.
and welcoming and all the things?
The expectations have been lived up to, but it has just been so many things that I never even expected that are so much, it's just so much better quality of life than, I even realized. When you grow up somewhere, you don't know what you're missing.
Right.
And that's what I think, I feel like I should write a book about the differences, the cultural differences of a place here, the South. I'm imagining this is pretty common amongst the South versus the environment that I came from. And for us, it's the right place. And I don't know that it is for everyone.
You're right, yeah. I tell a story a lot when I talk about us relocating here, and I was around the same age as some of your kids when I moved here. I was a teenager. I hated my parents for a while because, they took me from, an area that was growing and hustle and bustle and all of the things to Gallatin 23 years ago. And I was very unhappy for a little while, and then I adjusted and I found it. And my best friends, I still have lots of friends that live in other places, but the friends I keep in touch with are on a regular basis are the ones that I met here, and a lot of them are the ones I met my senior year of high school, which was my only year at Gallatin High School. And so I think that says a lot about the Gallatin culture and being warm and welcoming. But I'll never forget, we pulled into our neighborhood. We probably lived here about 2 weeks. And my mom was just waving at everybody. And I said, Mom, have you been out and met all the neighbors? Because that wouldn't be unusual for her. And she said, no, Kim. They were all waving back, too. And she said, no, Kim, we are in the true South, and people are just nice. And I'll never forget that, because it is true. And I think about it all the time, because people smile and they wave, and you don't experience that in all parts of the country. And, for someone that's lived in another part like I have, then you know that that's the case. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's not why we're here to talk about, but I think it is a fun part of your story. And I didn't know that where you were located geographically is tied into your business name. Is that why?
Yes,
Rancho
that's right,
Capital?
yeah.
So Rancho Capital Home Loans, I've bought a couple houses in my lifetime. Like, why would we choose to work with you as a home buyer? And
Well,
what do you
obviously,
do?
there's lots of lots of different places that you can get a home loan, and that's excuse me, that's what we do. We do home loans, so refinances, purchase home loans, some home equity lines of credit. We can do construction financing, things like that. But primarily, we're doing the single-family residence that's existing. That's going to be by far 95% of our business. So there's obviously a lot of places that you might go for that product. I think the thing that really helps us stand out is that we are like true mortgage brokers.
Okay.
So we don't lend our money. We don't have our own line of product, which means that we work with a lot of other banks. So we have a stable of other banks that we then broker the business to. So we're able to look for the best pricing. We're able to look for the right product. Some banks offer one product and have certain guidelines, and another bank has different guidelines. Even on common products like FHA financing, Federal Housing Administration, one bank might have one requirement and another bank might have another, because they have what's called overlays. So they make their own rules on top of the government FHA rules. So we have the ability to shop that. So that's a big advantage to us. Plus our pricing is I want to say always lower, but let's just say most of the time lower.
Okay.
Because we're such a small company. So I own the company with my business partner, Jeff Anderson, who still lives in California. And since we're the owners, we don't have other management below us. We don't have the layers of management and operations that we have to pay for. And all that is paid for one way, higher interest rates. So because we have such thin management and low overhead, we're able to have considerably lower interest rates than most. And then the other piece would be that we have a level of experience that most people wouldn't find as well. So like I've been in the business 21 years, my business partner's been over 30 years. His father before him was a mortgage broker.
Wow.
And then my other loan officer, my Spanish-speaking loan officer who's in California as well.
Spanish-speaking loan officer.
We do have
okay.
the opportunity to offer Spanish-speaking services as well. Both our loan officer who is licensed in Tennessee but does live in California, and our loan processor who is our operations manager, both speak Spanish. So we have that ability all the way through the process as well. But he's been in the business, Danny Espinoza has been in the business for 20 years as well. So all of our loan officers are really, usually when someone is this far into the business, they've moved on to senior management.
Right.
But because of the way we've set our business up, we are the loan officers. We are who you talk to. So the level of experience is considerably greater than most. So all of those things together, I believe we have a really good product offering that we have. And I think that as people use us more, you'll probably hear more about the way that we work as well. Our communication, we know that people want communication, they want accuracy. They don't want to get into buying a house and fall out because the numbers weren't right.
Right.
So, accuracy is very important in this business. So there's a lot of things that I could say that I feel that we're the right choice for people, but those are probably the main.
I like all of that, and I think the experience is certainly important, and I think you'll find here, and maybe you have already, that having that Spanish-speaking individual is going to be an asset to your team here to help with the growing population.
Yeah, no, I think that it will. I think that that's not very common.
Right, I don't think so either.
And I think that, again, coming from Southern California, that was more than very common.
Right.
I was becoming, I knew I needed to learn Spanish more fluently because of the opportunity and needing to serve a large population. So, I think it's going to be an advantage as we get the word out that that's something that we have access to. I think that that'll be a benefit too.
Awesome. And you now have a brick and mortar location, right? And
Yes,
it's
we do.
Historic, I think it's in a little historic corner, right?
Yeah, we're on the corner of right behind Anderson Funeral Home,
Okay.
right there on Franklin, on East Franklin. So 207 East Franklin, just outside of the square there in Gallatin.
In walking distance, so you could walk down there. So you could grab a coffee at Black Dress and then walk over there.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have like a standing account over at Swaney's, but we'll see.
Could be worse.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good spot to be.
Right now, it's an interesting time, I think, in this market. It has been for several years. What are the biggest challenges and the biggest opportunities? And maybe what advice would you share to somebody who's looking to buy a home either for the first time or a second or third time?
Mm-hmm. Definitely right now is an interesting time because interest rates have more than doubled. And when people say, well, they're not really that high. Like that's what you hear people that are older say. I remember when the rates were 16. I remember when the rates were 12. Because in 1982, the standard home loan interest rate was 16% and FHA was 23. And 2 million homes were sold that year. So that there's still a need to buy houses, no matter what the interest rate is. But you couple the interest rates with home prices, and that's where it becomes difficult. And home prices, people are waiting for home prices to come down. That's what the hope is. But the demand is what's going to sustain home prices. So it may not be, again, that local Tennessean or local Gallatin resident buys the house that is for sale, but somebody from the outside will. Because the home prices here are still very low comparative to many other markets. So unfortunately, I don't see a lot of room for home prices to come down. That just doesn't seem to be what I foresee. So the interest rates are kind of the other side of that equation. So when do we think that home loan interest rates are going to come back down? The expectation now is we want a 3, maybe a 4. That's going to be a tall order. That's going to be something that's going to be hard to come by, because having rates in the 2s and 2% interest rates and 3% interest rates on these 30-year fixed mortgages was a historic low. That is not something that you should anticipate or expect, right? So for people that are looking to buy now or that are interested in buying now, you just need to start getting your numbers. You need to talk to somebody who knows what's going on, a loan officer who has experience to be able to look at all the products that are available. We do have opportunities for 0% down. So usually the most difficult part of buying a house is the down payment, right? People will talk about interest rates and all these other things, but at the end of the day, what people really want to know, what's my payment, and how much cash do I need? All the other factors are kind of ancillary, right? So getting those numbers, the real numbers. So not to being run off by people saying, oh, rates are too high. What is the payment? Can you afford the payment? Is now the right time for your family? So that would be my recommendation, is to talk to someone who can start giving you the real numbers, and then you need to decide if that works for your budget.
Right. Now, are you that someone? Are you equipped to talk about those things with them? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that, again, there's always, some people will say, what, I'm going to rent a room out and I'm going to do these other things that's going to help, And those can be helpful, but remember, we're talking about this, you're going to rent a room for 30 years, right?
Right.
So you need to think about, the future as well. So we try to give very realistic, advice is really all I can say. I'm not a licensed financial advisor or anything like that, but I can definitely put that information out there. One of the recommendations I have for people who maybe are renting right now and say their rent is $1,200 a month and they're looking at buying a house for $2,000 a month, I often will say, put $800 into a savings account every month for the next 6 months. See how that goes.
Right.
If you have to dip into that, you just missed your mortgage payment.
You're not ready, yeah.
Right? So things like that. Credit repair as well. I'll talk about my recommendations for credit repair if someone has credit issues. And I always look at it, I tell people, I say, look, I'm going to tell you what I would do if this was my credit report.
Right.
And I've been doing this for 21 years. I've looked at a few credit reports over the years. So I'm able to help people in that way as well. But yeah, the market right now is difficult because we have that combination of house prices that absorbed 2 and 3% interest rates that are no longer available. So there's different ways to work with those things. But again, I would make sure that you talk to somebody who is going to give you the real explanation of products and how they work, because there are ways, again, this business unfortunately has a bad reputation of people that have taken advantage of others, and that's still a possibility. So make sure you work with people that are going to have your best interests at heart when they give you kind of a program or a structure to help you get into a house.
I think that's great feedback. One of my stories I always share, when we bought our first house, we were looking at all kinds of things, and we left our apartment to move into a house because we did kind of what you said. We had saved up that money and we knew our rent was about to go up, and so we tried to figure out, like, do we really need to pay this? We actually wound up paying way less for our first mortgage than that apartment. But we had a real estate agent, and I'm so glad that we had who we did at that time, because she was like a mother. And we were very young, and we had pulled all of these houses, and some of them were in horrible condition. Some of them were foreclosures. And I remember, I'll never forget, we pulled in the driveway of one, and before, she wouldn't even unlock the doors. And she was the old school realtor that drove you around in the car with you. She wouldn't even unlock the door. She threw it in reverse. And I said, wait, we want to get out. And she goes, we're not looking at this one. Your parents would kill me if I let you look at this. And so I think that's making sure you have people that are on your team and not just going to push you into something. Because she could have just been like, this is a great place for you to live. But she knew our financial situation and she knew our life. And she was like, you don't have the time or the money to put into this spot. And so I think that's a great piece of advice. We know where you are, but if somebody wants to get a hold of you or find you online, how would they do that?
Well, our website is myranchocapital.com.
Okay.
So you will find us there. You can search for the branch location of Gallatin, and our information will pull up. My phone number is 615-721-2900. And then you can always email me, which is brent@myranchocapital.com.
Awesome. Brent, thanks for coming on the show today, and thanks for loving Gallatin and sharing your heart about it. So
I'm glad to be here.
and we're so glad to
Thanks
have
for
you.
having me.
We're glad to have you here. Hey, there's a lot of things coming up between the next time we meet, but one thing I wanted to share with you is something really exciting that just happened, and that is our city guide we just got. It is our brand new 2023 Gallatin City Guide. It is a lifestyle publication in the front and a business by category directory in the back. If you've been following along, then you notice we keep a few other copies on the table, last year's, and then I found this one from 2017 on Ball State's campus. So you can drop by the chamber office at 118 West Main, and you can grab a coffee while you're over there and stroll over to see Brent as well. But before we meet again, we've got the Gallatin Shalom Zone Sneaker Ball coming up on February 25th. That is the first time event. You're going to throw on a formal ball gown and your shoes and just dance the night away. March 3rd, we're going to be in the Vineyards at Long Hollow Gardens for the United Way Gala. And then on March 11th, we want you to join us on the streets of Gallatin for the Gallatin Shamrock Run. I can't talk this morning. The 10th annual Gallatin Shamrock Run, benefiting the Chamber Foundation, supporting innovative enhancement projects in our area. We're so glad you met us here again today on the corner of Commerce and Community, and we hope to see you again next week.